Welcome to the Utilization of Money Podcast with Todd Levine from Levine Financial Group. In this podcast, we teach our clients how to own their personal economy. Join us on this journey where we build upon your greatest asset as Todd draws from his years of expertise, solutions, strategies, and expert guest stories to help you understand how money works.
Hello and welcome to Utilization of Money with Todd Levine from Levine Financial Group. Today we're going to be talking about something that's incredibly important, and that's the top 5 ways to become a world-class saver. Good morning, Todd. How are you?
Good morning, Eric.
I'm excited. I could use a little help with saving. I could be a better saver. I'm looking forward to today's podcast. Why did you choose this topic?
You know, this is one of the most important things that we discuss with our clients on a day-to-day basis. Everybody is focused on rate of return and creating high yields in their investments. But what they're not focused on is saving. You can see that because the national average of savings is extremely low. I think it's like less than 2%. So it really tells the story about where people are ending up at the end of the day in regards to the wealth that's been created.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's very important to focus on this very early on to make sure that we can get our clients to become world-class savers.
Yeah, and obviously it's discipline, right? It's almost like a muscle you have to exercise regularly to do well with, or to do well at, I should say. So it's great that you're starting this conversation with your clients. Where do you start? I mean, you've got 5 items we're going to be covering today, correct?
Correct.
All right. Well, I'm here to learn, brother.
Well, first and foremost, you know, we want to get our clients to pay themselves first. You know,
Okay.
I think what happens is we call it, you know, the funnel. And so what happens is we have this funnel and their income pours into this funnel. And what goes out first is basic expenses, mortgage, clothing, food, all that stuff.
So things people would say is a normal budget, right?
Yeah. And then blended in there is also lifestyle. Okay. So you have, you know, going out to dinner and going on vacations and all this stuff. And what's kind of coming down from the funnel is what we call the crumbs. And the crumbs is usually what's being saved. So everybody has this funnel, the income comes in, they take care of their basic expenses, lifestyle, and the crumbs come down, and that's usually what everybody saves. And for us, you know, if you could kind of think about this for a second and think about that funnel at the top, if you had like just another line that was coming out on the top right and with a little, you know, square, and that was our own bank, that was our wealth accumulation account, that was our pay yourself first bank. If you could imagine the income coming in and the right percentage of your income going directly into this account, and then you handle your basic expenses, then you handle your lifestyle and the vacations and all that other stuff, and anything else that trickles down from that point in time really just becomes just play money, extra money that can be reallocated to any specific area to what you're thinking. But a lot of people are missing that top, that corner piece, that pay yourself first wealth accumulation account. And what's happening is what they're doing is they're saving the crumbs, and the crumbs aren't amounting to much. And that's really problem number 1.
So it sounds to me, as you describe that, Todd, it seems to me that is actually the way I would think of it is that's a bill for me to pay, right? Paying myself first is just another bill, like my mortgage is a bill. I have to pay that every month, you know, to keep my house, right? So that would be almost a bill that I would say, you know, I've got to pay myself this much into this account. And that's just a normal part of my budgeting bills. Instead of, like you said, at the end, what have I got left over? Oh, great. I've got $78 this month to put into my savings, or I've got $130 to put into my savings. Being intentional of incorporating that into a budget as though it's another bill that you have to pay, not something that's just like, well, if I've got it, I'll keep it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you said it perfectly. The challenge is that people just don't do it. And this is so we could say that all we want, but I mean, usually, people are very emotional about life, about their money, about everything. So, if they had to make a choice, a lot of times, whether or not it's, all right, well, I'm going to pay myself X into this wealth accumulation account, or I'm going to take my family on this vacation that I've always wanted to do. Usually they're going to choose the vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it's habits, and a lot of it's, it's making sure that our clients are disciplined and have the structure to actually do this. But it's not as easy as it sounds, and that's the thing. So from day one, we want to try to educate our clients on the importance of being disciplined in this area and making sure that we are really paying ourselves first the appropriate amount of savings based on our total gross income and passive income sources are.
Yeah, I mean, that makes 100% sense, and that's something that I need to work on. I've got 2 young grandkids, and so my wife, I'm not going to blame her, but doggone it, she finds that extra crumb here and there, and what can we buy the grandkids, or what can we do with the grandkids? I love them, but yeah, they're more expensive than I thought they were going to be, Todd. I'll be honest.
They are, and that's a fact. So what we have to understand is that we can't just live for today in the moment. And I think a lot of people do, or I should say, I know a lot of people do. We have to be able to see past this moment in time and see what it is we're really working toward, because the end result can be very, very painful if not.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I'll give you an example, of a client that, whenever I talk about paying yourself first, this client comes to mind. He was a physician and doing fairly well. And, when I first sat down with this person, the first thing out of his mouth was, well, I max out my 401k plan and I got a match on that. He felt that was sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
So we looked at the funnel and we looked at all the cash flow sources and we looked at all the income and we started to identify that there was a lot more money that can be saved outside of what he was currently putting into his 401k plan. So when we broke down what that was going to look like for him from an income standpoint at the end of the day, or when he retires, there wasn't even enough to cover, maybe from an income standpoint, 1/10 of what he was earning at the current point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So my point was to him I was like, so you're making $500,000 a year, let's just say, and you're saving $19,000 of that money into a qualified plan, which is okay.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is, where's the other $175,000 going if we were going to be saving at the current income status that you're at, saving 20% of your income, which is where we should have been based on what he was earning and what his age was.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like the $1 million question. So he says, well, that's a great question. I have no idea where the money's going. And what we started to do is identify that all the money was coming into the funnel and where it was going. It was going into lavish vacations. It was going to really nice cars,
Mm-hmm.
Home renovations, all stuff that was just at the end of the day, really not going towards planning for his future. The problem is that those crumbs that were trickling down weren't significant. So the crumbs really signified the whatever was, sitting around in a savings and checking account as an emergency type of fund, which wasn't necessarily a lot. So to me, there was a huge lost opportunity cost in losing all that potential savings. So our job is we had to first identify where it was all going and then recapture it and then redeploy it into other areas. Because just because the 401k or the retirement plan says you can only save X, that doesn't mean that that's what you should save. If your income is much higher, then we need to stay true to that and understand that portion of of your income still needs to be saved.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But a lot of people think differently. So they're like, oh, I'm doing this. And then it just flows into their world. And then what they end up with is those crumbs that we talk about all the time. And that presents a pretty big problem down the road if we don't catch it early.
Yeah. All right. So number one is pay yourself first. That's the foundation. Now for this, what's the second thing?
So the second thing is create a wealth accumulation account. And so this to us is a very important part of our process, because once we've identified, that whole concept of paying yourself first, is we want to make sure that we can kind of build an account that's separate from their everyday savings and checking account. So we don't want to commingle the wealth accumulation portion that we're saving with your everyday savings and checking and activity. Because what happens is once again, back to that funnel, is that as things are going in there, things come up. So if it's not being properly segregated, then what you're going to do is end up grabbing from that wealth accumulation bucket and kind of going back into your old habits and spending the money and not saving it. So we like to create these accounts. So we give our clients options, and really this is on a case-by-case basis. Some clients are extremely disciplined, so we're okay setting up this wealth accumulation account in one of their bank accounts early. So this is way they can just, the money comes in and they can move over that savings portion into that account away from their everyday savings, everyday transactions. On some of our clients who aren't really disciplined or don't feel that they're disciplined enough, then what we do is we move to go to a third party and set up a wealth accumulation account. And this account is separate. Now it's liquid. They could get to the money just not as easily as just, walking in and putting an ATM card in and taking the money out.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is out of sight, out of mind.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, that would help anybody, I think, no matter how disciplined you are. I think that would be a huge step. Anything else I love the sound of a wealth accumulation account. Is there anything else we need to know about this specifically?
Yeah, I think that this account is really just a holding tube for where the money is going to be dispersed out from an asset reallocation standpoint. Meaning that I don't want our clients to think that this wealth accumulation account is an account purely for an investment reason. It's really just a holding tube that's gonna really protect our ability to save. And then once we're recaptured in this one area, then we can redeploy the monies out into other areas. The challenge is that the money's never getting to this point because it's being spent.
Yeah.
So once we get the money redirected into an area like this, then it's easy for us to disperse out into other areas from a reallocation standpoint.
Fantastic. All right. So, that the wealth accumulation account, that seems pretty easy. You've got that set up now. That's number 3. What's tip 3?
Tip 3 is identify a personal savings objective.
Is that like a goal?
Correct.
Okay.
So we like to look at this as, so your personal savings objective is what you can actually save on a monthly basis, not including any sort of additional income that's coming in from other sources, okay, or any other assets. So if you make $100,000 a year, for us, the savings rate should be at a minimum of 15% of your gross, which is $15,000 a year. Okay. So now, as you can imagine, is a lot of people's savings objectives are probably not 15%.
Mm-hmm.
So our job is to really, and we'll get into this a little bit later on, is how do we find the cash flow? How do we get our clients up to the appropriate savings amounts? But the personal savings objective really is just getting our clients to identify how much it is they can save on a monthly basis without making any sort of changes. And this is something that I believe is powerful in our process, because they're expecting for us to come in and just say, okay, say, you need to save this. What I want to see early on is what can they save? If we weren't going to make any changes at all, you're in my office. If I said, okay, well, we've identified all of these goals and objectives, and how much do you feel you can save on a monthly basis towards these goals and objectives? What is that number? And everybody's different, right? So they might be like, that person that makes $100,000 a year might be like, I could save $200 a month. Well, clearly that's not enough money, right, to be saving if you're making $100,000 a year. But it's a starting point. So we call that the personal savings objective. Before we start re-engineering all the cash flow sources and everything to really find the true savings objective that we feel will be able to get them back up to the 15 to 20% level.
All right. So how do people take that? I mean, it sounds like you're taking some baby steps in there to make sure that they're comfortable with the changes, and you don't want them to necessarily have to change their entire lifestyle, but changes do have to be made, right? I mean, my wife's going to have to stop buying the grandkids so much stuff, and I'm going to have to stop, having so much ice cream or whatever I'm spending the money on.
Sure.
So how do they accept that as you begin that process?
Well, listen, it's, I say this to them all the time. This is your plan. It's not my plan.
True.
This is your life. It's not my life. And so you're sitting in my office because you want certain things to happen in your financial life over a period of time and in your personal life. And if you're not willing to make changes, and if you're not willing to readjust your lifestyle in certain ways to be able to get to that point, then there's really not much to have a discussion about. Then you're just going to save what you're going to save. But the reality of the situation is after we stress test and everything, it's going to be factually proven that you're going to be extremely behind, and it's going to be very difficult to handle all the things that you wanted to handle, such as college savings, or buying your kids a home, or traveling the world when you retire, whatever, buying the beach house. So these are things that during the process, I'm like, listen, I can only lead you to the water, but you're here, and most of the people are coming in. They want to make change, they want better, and they understand that what they're currently doing is not as efficient as it could be.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you see the statistics of what people are saving in our country, it's actually kind of scary. I read that in Transamerica, there was a study found that 14% of the millennials surveyed that they save $0 to $4,000 to $5,000. They have $0 to $5,000 saved for retirement, while 42% of the baby boomers had $250,000 or more. So if you think about that, is what's happening right now is the world, as a society, we just don't save enough. And when you look at that crazy statistic of baby boomers, more than almost half the population have $250,000 or more. I mean, that's not a lot of money to retire on when you start factoring in a lot of different things, the rising cost of healthcare, inflation, all of these things that are concerns for people who are in retirement. So it's so very important. And I have these conversations with my clients. I'm like, listen, do you want to be part of that statistic, or do you want to feel a little bit more now to have more choices and opportunities later on?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's it. We're living longer, but it costs us more money to live longer. So we've got to be prepared. And nobody wants to live in squalor for the last 10, 15 years of their life. So, I mean, habits have to change.
Right.
What's step 4?
So step 4 is reallocation of cash flow sources. So let me explain this. So now we talked about personal savings objective. So when clients come into our office, their money's they're getting paid. So they earn income. and it's getting chopped up in a lot of different ways, right? It's, you have taxes, are taking a good portion of it. Then you have some going to debt. Then you have some going to lifestyle, and then those crumbs are being saved. Okay. And so what we want to try to do is we want to try to identify where all this money is going and how can we adjust and make changes on every level to try to free up some cash flow to be able to save more. Mm-hmm. So when I ask them what that personal savings objective is, it's usually low from a percentage standpoint, and it's usually low for a reason, because all their expendable cash flow is going to areas like this: debt, okay, credit card debt, or they have a nice, they have a 30-year mortgage, very low rate, but they're aggressively trying to pay it off. So additional cash flow, not understanding that potentially maybe it's not better. Maybe it's better not to put so much money into over and above into the mortgage. Maybe we can get better movements on that outside and more flexibility and protection. Mm-hmm. We look at their other insurance coverages, their property and casualty coverages. Are they properly protected? Number one. And are their premiums too high? Are their deductibles not aligned, or their liabilities not aligned? So we start looking at all these different areas. Do they have other assets that are generating passive income? And where's that passive income going? Mm-hmm. Have we done the right tax planning? Meaning, are we taking full advantage of all of our opportunities? If we're a small business owner, or we have real estate properties, are they structured property in the right corporations or LLCs to where we can properly depreciate the properties and then find additional cash flow sources? So we start to identify all of these different areas potentially where their income's being where the income's being lost. So it's coming into that funnel, it's getting chopped up every way. So in their mind, they're not seeing it. They're just seeing it's just gone, right? Up, my 401k gets paid every month. Great. Mm-hmm. And then I have money going over here into this real estate property. That's gone. And then I just, so, I have my car insurance. I never looked at it in the last 5 years. I have my homeowner's insurance. I haven't looked at in the last 5 years. The same accountant who's doing the same, who's not really introducing any sort of ideas built around my real estate portfolio. So what it is we do is we try to really identify all these areas. And it's so amazing that usually when we get to the end of this re-engineering process, it's amazing how close the cash flow, the expendable cash flow is to the savings percentage rate to where we want to be. So just by making changes, all of a sudden we found X, and it's, if you calculate it, it's up and around that 15-20% number. So coming in, they might be like, well, Todd, I can only save 3%. But after taking them through this re-engineering process and really identifying all the inefficiencies, all of a sudden we found enough cash flow to where we can reallocate that into additional savings, into other savings areas. And that would amount to the other, 12 to 15% that they can't save. So it's found for them. They're like, wow, this is, I didn't even realize this existed. And all these changes make so much sense that now all of a sudden we've found all this money and we're going to create so many more opportunities with it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you have an example from a client that you've worked with that this really clicked with and that you were able to make a big change?
For sure. I actually do. I have one client. The two of them are amazing people. And, when I met them, they were, the typical, high income earners, all their money going into one particular area. And, I'd have to say they were going in, just going into like 401k and pension plans. And when I looked at their situation, there was a lot to talk about there because they were good savers. The money was just being reallocated into other areas. So they were thinking they were completely capped out on their ability to save. And they were completely shut out of their ability to utilize their money. because through their life, all their money, that 15, 20, 25% of their money was going into one area. They didn't realize that, they lived a very disciplined life. So they probably had the ability to get up to maybe close to 40% of savings, when really trying to identify and fully maximize the capability of all of their assets and then reallocating. So, we successfully did this for them, years ago, and it's opened up so many more opportunities for them. So we got them from saving, the normal 20% up to approximately 40%. And with that, we've been able to allocate a lot of that money into more liquid areas rather than just 401k and pension, which is what they were locked out of. So when I met them, they were like wealthy, but completely locked out of their money. And any any extra crumbs that were being saved into an account bearing 0%. So what we've effectively done is we've increased their savings rate by about 15%. Wow. into really nice areas that give them some nice collateral. So now what they're doing is they're doing exactly what it is they wanted to do in regards to building up their real estate portfolio, being able to do the right estate planning so they can figure out exactly who it is and how much they want to leave to their children and to some charitable organizations. So, and this all opened up because we were able to like re-engineer, and I'm like, man, there's so many opportunities being lost here because we're just thinking about this really micro, right? And as soon as we started to get the cash flow and the money moving around, it just created a lot of opportunities for them now and for generations for generations in the future.
Nice. What is step number 5?
So number 5 is create the habit. Probably one of the most important ones.
And probably the hardest.
The hardest. To me, it's exciting because most people think one way in regards to their money, and it's really hard to create the habit of saving. So, and I see it all the time, right? It's like people, they don't necessarily want to change their lifestyle. They'll say it to me, they're like, Todd, I do not want to change my lifestyle. I like my life. I like the way it is. And if you're going to sit here and tell me that I need to change what I'm currently doing, then it's probably not going to work out. So my goal is to create a plan for them to where they're not actually coming out of pocket as much money as they think. So it's not really, that's the key to it early on. So the personal savings objective is what they feel comfortable saving. Once we re-engineer their financial world, all of a sudden it frees up a lot of cash flows. Now, this is where creating a habit comes into place. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example. So I had a client come in and, we're taking them through the process, and there really wasn't much expendable cash flow. So I started to identify, where it was all going. And, they had a house probably that they shouldn't have had, and they had a couple things and whatever. So, the wife was just, hey, this is my house. I'm not messing with it, even though it was probably too expensive for what it is they make. But there's other areas. So anyway, so they couldn't save any money. So they're like, we cannot save any money. 0. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay. So I took them through the reengineering process, and we found a lot of money. So we ended up finding around $40,000 to $50,000 of cash flow through all this reengineering, from the tax planning side of it, some of the real estate properties, just making some changes internally where they might be redeploying their money to redeploy other places to create additional cash flow, interest moves, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I have this money here, and I said, so how much do you think out of this 40, 50,000 that I just found for you that you didn't know existed should be allocated towards your short-term objectives? And how much of this $50,000 do you think should be allocated towards your medium and long-term objectives? And it was interesting because she said, all 50,000 to my short-term, 0 to my long-term. So I was like, wow, that tells the whole story.
Yeah.
because here I am, I just found $50,000 and you don't want to save any of it.
Yeah.
I said, so we need to create a habit right now. And this is going to be really hard because I think you want to do, I want to guess that you want to do better for your family or else you wouldn't be sitting here. And you're open-minded because you're sitting here. So we need to be better. We need to create better habits in saving. So we need to identify a strong savings objective built around this cash flow that we just found. And we need to start getting you saving into this wealth accumulation account and then reallocating the money out. And we need to be extremely disciplined in doing it. So it's like the habit is the hardest thing but once they create that habit, it becomes like second nature, so annually we have a client appreciation event. We have about 250 clients attend. And it's the one event that my wife comes to. And it's funny because she says to me always, it's amazing that all your clients that are here, it's amazing the way they all think. She goes, I talk to them all. She goes, and they all just love saving. They love protecting their families. And I said, yeah, that's one of the things that I like to hang my hat on is that we have successfully created a lot of world-class savers. And we've done it through this process of creating wealth accumulation accounts, identifying, re-engineering, but making sure that they're being disciplined until they create that habit. Mm-hmm. And then we start to build on it from there. But most people always gravitate towards, oh, we found all this cash flow. Great. I could buy a new purse or I could buy a new car or whatever. The habit is most important. And trust me, there have been clients who fall off and refuse fight the process in the system. And those are the ones that are going to fail, unfortunately. If you don't want to be disciplined, it's most likely not going to end up well, or you're going to end up, with just a lot less than you thought you would have had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, here's the thing is that you're setting people on a pathway to success because as much as they say, I don't want to change my lifestyle now, they're certainly not going to want to have to lower their lifestyle in retirement, especially when they have more time on their hands. So I love the 5 steps, the 5 true ways to become a world-class saver. Todd, this was a great podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Eric.
You bet. And thank you all for listening to the Utilization of Money Podcast with Todd Levine. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Todd comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at Levine Financial Group, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Utilization of Money podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.
Todd Levine, registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS. Security products and advisory services offered through PAS, member FINRA SIPC. Financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. PAS is an indirect, wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Levine Financial Group is not an affiliate or subsidiary of PAS or Guardian. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. 2019-89771, expiration 11/21.